candidates for this afternoon's 88th district are, beginning in at my immediate right, seat number 1, Cheryl Ann Stephenson.
That's me.
Yes, the far right.
Okay.
Cheryl Ann Stephenson, Josh Myers, and Gail Swanson. Okay. First of all, we'll begin with asking Cheryl Ann to introduce herself.
Hello, and thank you all for being here, and thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for organizing the candidate forum today. My name is Cheryl Ann Stephenson, and I am a nonprofit event planner and producer here in Lexington. During my career, I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, I've owned my own business, and I've worked with countless nonprofits here in the Lexington area. I hail from Eastern Kentucky. My mother is a retired teacher, and my dad is an Army veteran who worked his entire life in the coal industry, not as an executive, but as a member of the working class. I was raised in a very working class home, and my parents taught me the value of hard work, and they taught me that when you see someone in need, that you always need to help, that you should always be a good neighbor. I have lived in Lexington now for 19 years, and 18 of those years I have lived in the 88th district. So the people of the 88th are my neighbors, and I am ready to help them because I see that they have a need, and I'm ready to give them back something that they haven't had for a very long time, and that's a voice in Frankfort.
So first of all, thank you to the League for organizing this forum, and to the Central Library and their staff for hosting us this afternoon. And then also to Cherlynn and Gail, I appreciate the opportunity to always get to see you guys and chat with you all and discuss our different visions for how we can best represent the 88th. The reality is that the state of Kentucky is facing some serious challenges. We've got an unfunded pension liability that puts us ranked right at the bottom of the country. We're facing budget shortfalls that are almost on an epic proportion. We've got an opioid crisis that is ravaging our communities, and we've got a governor and a Republican majority leadership that seem disinterested in trying to help the vast majority of Kentucky. And I think that we've got an opportunity now. I think that it shows how disrepresented the 88th is, that you've got 3 fine candidates vying to be the Democrat in this race. I think that, you know, on myself, I've got a track record of leadership. I've been the chair of Lexington Fairness for the last 4 years. I've been a commissioner of human rights for the city of Lexington for the last 2.5 years. And I've been a part on the front lines of helping to move our community forward in a way that helps to lift the entire village up. And I look forward to taking that same kind of drive and energy with me to Frankfort as a representative from the 88th District.
Ms. Stevenson. Ms. Swanson, excuse me.
Hi, my name is Gail Swanson, and I have lived in the 88th District for the past 13 years. I am a retired state employee, which gives me a big incentive to be involved in this current legislative work. I am currently an educator. I work as adjunct faculty at BCTC, and have done that for about the past 11 years. I have spent the last 15 years as a community organizer, and I am on the board of the organization that I've worked with, and as well as the executive board. And working in community organizing has given me a real opportunity to work with both people on the local level, because we have worked with the people of Lexington and Fayette County to develop the Affordable Housing Fund that was talked about in the last forum that was held. And we are currently working on issues involving crime and in an attempt to bring a better policing method into Fayette County that has had great success in other places. We're also working on the opioid addiction problem in Fayette County. This has given me an opportunity to work with the state resources as well as we have tackled the issue of payday lending. I'll stop right there.
All right, now we will begin with our first question, which will go first of all to Mr. Myers. Mr. Merz.
I'll interrupt. If it's easier, if you want to go by our first names, I'm totally fine with that.
I
If that
agree.
makes
Like
it easier
that.
with the two S last
Two
names,
S's,
sure.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that. Very good. In fact, I feel like calling you by
Yeah,
first names.
we're friends here.
Excellent. Josh, would you answer this question first? Payday lenders can add up to over 400% in interest and fees. Would you vote to limit those fees and interest? Why or why not?
Absolutely. Our payday lending industry here in Kentucky is virtually unchecked. It is a predatory type of lending that preys on our most disadvantaged and our most vulnerable communities, and is especially very predatory to our communities of color. And we need to definitely put those particular industries, that particular industry into check and limit those interest rates, but also try to limit their ability to go and unchecked collection on this endless cycle of payday lending that begins with one withdrawal, and then they have to write another check in order to pay that loan, and it just keeps going and going until we're looking at hundreds and hundreds of dollars in interest fees on an annual basis. So absolutely, we need here in Kentucky some stronger payday lending laws, and that comes from Frankfort, not here in our city hall.
Gail?
Payday lenders are, I'm not sure how to describe them, but as Josh was saying, the fees that they charging $400 or 400% APR is unconscionable. The bill, the community organizing effort that I have worked with for the last 15 years has spent the last 5 years in Frankfort pretty consistently attempting to get legislators to cap interest rates at 36% because that's what the federal government has decided is sufficient for payday lenders when they make loans to the military, active military. It is a Frankfort problem. In fact, this past legislative session, Senate Bill 225 was introduced, which would give payday lenders even more power among the people of Kentucky with higher rates, and also allowing them to take out larger and larger loans. And they could also have two different types of loans, typical payday lending loans, as well as the loan that was specified in Senate Bill 225. I can only think that you would think this would be a slam dunk issue in terms of fighting legislation in terms of payday lending, but it's not. And so I can only feel like because of the vast resources, financial resources. Thank you.
Cheryl Ann?
Well, obviously, there isn't a lot to add to what they said, but I think that it is just an example of one more place where we are allowing corporations to run rampant. We have turned into, in the entire country, a place where we are putting profits above people, and that absolutely has to stop, and this is one of the biggest places that we can make a difference in that very quickly here in our state.
Thank you. Gail, you'll be first on the next question.
Okay.
In an effort to address criminal activity and violence, the state legislature passed a gang violence bill that would make certain gang activities felonies and require 85% of the sentence to be met. Do you support this? Why or why not?
I do not support this. I think instead of creating situations where we incarcerate more and more people, we need to be creating situations where we provide interventions and help people deal with issues before they get to the point where they're involved in criminal activity. Our jails are overrun, and we don't need people in jail. And unfortunately, most of the people who are incarcerated are black males, and there's a reason for that. And I think this gang violence bill would continue to criminalize black males at a rate that we don't need to see happening. Gang violence can be dealt with in the way that other types of community violence can be dealt with. There is a program that is could be of great benefit both here and in Louisville and other large communities in Kentucky called the National Network for Safe Communities that involves not criminalizing behaviors but working with people before they get to the point where they're engaged in violent criminal activity and providing them with resources within the community that can help protect them from becoming involved and influenced by other gang members. It's a great program to use and one that I hope to see in Kentucky in the not too distant future.
Cheryl Ann?
Well, I am adamantly opposed to the gang bill. I think it is a way for people to, again, cater to those who are looking to profit. We have an issue with for-profit prisons that I think needs to be addressed. We had done away with those, and now they are coming back to Kentucky in a big way, and we absolutely need to address that. I think that this bill caters to those people to allow those for-profit prisons to fill up, and they will fill up disproportionately with people of color. We do know that. I think about $19.5 million was attached to this bill, and I would love to see that money invested in other ways instead of using that money to prosecute and house those prisoners. That's money that we need to be putting into our schools, into after-school programs, and into our family resource centers so that we can get to these kids before a gang gets to them. And we also know that many young people enter into gang activity because they are looking for someone to help their household. They need food, they need money, they need basic resources, and that money could be better spent aiding those and preventing them from ever entering into a gang in the first place.
Josh?
So, House Bill 169 was the gang bill, or the anti-gang bill. Was actually sponsored by the current incumbent in the 88th district, who is vacating his seat or is not running for re-election. And what it really amounts to, aside from several other areas, is it creates mandatory minimums and lowers the thresholds for what qualifies as a gang. Studies have shown us time and time again that mandatory minimums adversely affect our communities of color, and that's why I worked with Representative Attica Scott out of Louisville and Reverend Anthony here in Lexington to actually talk to each and every one of our council members when they were considering an endorsement, if you will, a resolution calling on the General Assembly to pass that bill. We managed to convince the council here in Lexington that the voice of the city should not be lent to such an egregious bill. As Cherlynn mentioned, it was $19 million when we've got an unfunded pension liability. We've got budget cuts across the board. Our public universities are looking at a 6.25% cut to their budgets. Where is this $19 million that Representative Benvenuti, where did he find this in order to spend that? We need to be, working on intervention. And as a state, we need to be working with our cities, Louisville, Lexington, and other areas to work on programs that address the root problems that lead towards gang affiliation and gang violence.
Thank you. The next question, which will go first of all to
Cherlynn.
I think it's Cherlynn.
I think it's me.
to Cheryl Ann. Yes, if I'll just follow this chart, it does have a method in its madness. We'd like to be informed as to your stance on charter schools, and if you support, why? If not, why?
I am opposed to charter schools. There is absolutely no reason that we should be handing over public funds to a school. Once again, is everybody starting to see the pattern here? For profit, for profit. So charter schools are basically private schools, so for-profit schools that will use public school money. When we have such an underfunding of our current public schools, there is absolutely no reason that we should be funneling any of that money away from those kids into a charter school. Studies have shown that charter schools all across America are failing. They are not producing better results for any of those students that are coming out of public school and into the charter school. They can turn away children at will, which is another way that they could ensure segregation. I think Representative Attica Scott has been pretty vocal on that she thinks that it is just another way to bring segregation back to our schools. And I think that while our schools are sometimes in disarray, we need more teachers, we need more guidance counselors, we need more mental health nurses in place at our public schools. And until our public schools are 100% funded and all of those kids have everything that they absolutely need, no to charter schools.
Josh?
So yeah, charter schools was part of the bucket list that the conservative majority, when they took the House in the 2017 session, it was part of their bucket list that they wanted to accomplish. They managed to ram that bill through. It's wrong for Kentucky. It's wrong for Fayette County. It's wrong for Lexington. It's the same as taking a brick out of one of our public schools and giving it to a for-profit corporation so that they can educate without any protections for kids of color, for LGBT youth. The same kind of protections that we have in our public schools are not there for these youth. The thing is that public education, yes, it needs to be funded because it's our great equalizer in society, and it doesn't matter which part of the 88th District or which part of Fayette County or which part of Kentucky that you happen to have been born in or live in. Public education is the way that we lift kids of all colors, shapes, sizes, orientations, that we lift them out of poverty and we give them opportunities to excel and to become, everything that they can be. So, I would ask, if I wanted to join a country club, I wanted the state to build a country club, and then I wanted to join it, but I want you to pay for it. Are you okay with that? Well, of course not. That's the way charter schools are, is you paying for somebody else to have a luxury that you may or may not be able to afford or be able to partake in. And that's not good for Kentucky.
Yes, I'm against charter schools as well. The argument has been that you can create charter schools and not hurt public schools, but I do not see how that could happen. Since we don't have enough money to do what we need to do for the children of Kentucky anyway, making that less does not make very good sense to me. Charter schools operate outside the purview of Public Law 94-142, and as Josh says, that does not make them responsible for educating all children appropriately. It does not allow for free public education for those children. In talking with the principal at one of the middle schools in our district, his big concern for his students was with mental health issues. And talked about the fact that he took out of his own personal funds in operating the school so that he could hire a school psychologist because there weren't funds from the district office. So we have lots of areas in our public education that need to be addressed. We do not need to support public education for for-profit people. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh, you have the next question first. What is your stance on the legalization of marijuana, and is it a legitimate source of revenue for the state of Kentucky? Ooh. Did you get that?
I think I got it. So I think we have to look at the legalization of marijuana from three fronts. First of all, we have to look at, are we ready to support the legalization of medicinal usage by adults or even youth that is prescribed by a medical physician? And I think that the answer to that was built in House Bill 166 that was championed by our Secretary of State, had bipartisan support from both parties in both chambers. And yes, we need to make that an option because medical decisions should not be made by legislators on the floor of the Kentucky House or the Senate. It should be made in consultation with your actual physician. The second aspect that we have to look at is the decriminalization of minor possession. As mentioned by Cherlynn, our prison system is overcrowded. And a lot of those are offenders that are charged and were convicted with minor possession charges. We have to work towards decriminalizing that. The third part is, do we look at the legalization of responsible recreational use by adults? And if I walked into a room and I said, I want to talk to you about bringing $1 billion industry to Kentucky, do you want to have a conversation about it? In our revenue shortfalls, we need to bring the smartest folks in the room, and we need to work towards letting adults make the kind of decisions that they're capable of making. And so, yes, I would support all three of those fronts: the legalization of medicinal, the decriminalization of possession, and the legalization of responsible recreational use.
Cheryl Ann?
I agree with Josh. I think that we definitely need to start with medical marijuana. I think that it helps us on multiple fronts. I think it obviously will be a help to many suffering Kentuckians. It will bring in some revenue for us. About a third of the states that have medical marijuana right now, and there are, I believe, 29, about a third of those do charge taxes on that. It will create jobs, which, Lord knows, we need some jobs here in Kentucky. And it'll also help us put a huge dent in our opioid crisis. Studies have shown that states that have medical marijuana, they have about a 25% decrease in opioid use, opioid overdoses. So I think that that's another angle to this that we have to look at to consider that. We do need to look at the decriminalization, like Josh said. I saw a stat, and I can't for the life of me tell you exactly where I saw it, but it estimates that almost 60% of the people that we have in prison at the moment are in because of a minor marijuana charge. We have a huge overcrowding problem, and that would go a long way in helping that. And again, we need revenue. We have so many large problems that need solutions, and this could totally be the way that we do it. We have to have new dedicated streams of revenue, and I think this could be one of them.
Gail?
Yeah, this is one of those that sometimes I feel one way and other times I feel another. And I agree with the whole idea of adults making adult decisions and having the opportunity to do that. Marijuana also has the potential to be a good source of revenue. But I guess where I would have to come down is that I think this is an area where we need some more studies, some more research done. I know in Colorado, which has approved the sale of medical marijuana, they have seen an uptick in the juvenile use of drugs. And I don't know if that's a fluke, because they have not, it was only a few years ago when they legalized medical marijuana. So, that could be an anomaly that's not accounted for. But I think this is an area that we need to maybe sit back for a little while and look at the research in terms of long-term effects and how it plays out in areas where they have already legalized marijuana.
Thank you. Now, because I have mistakenly gotten you all out of order,
That's all right.
Gail, I have to ask you to take the first stab at this question, but it's
okay.
one you're well prepared for. It's the one you all came to talk about.
Okay.
This is your opportunity to tell the audience what will be your priorities if you are elected.
Okay. My priorities. There are so many wonderful things about Kentucky that I love. It's what keeps me here and has kept me here. But we are experiencing some kind of dark times right now. And I think there are a lot of things that have come together to create a perfect storm in terms of financial injustice, economic injustice, social injustice. My priority would be to begin to address the problems by addressing the budget. Well, not the budget, but taxes. I think we are in great need of a tax overhaul, not tax breaks, not any of those things, but a tax overhaul that more equally distributes the responsibility for paying taxes across the board, that does not pander to corporate greed, that does not allow corporations and people who make an income that's in the highest levels to pay the least amount of taxes. I think there are areas where we can increase our revenue sources through taxation that would not have to be uncomfortable for anybody in the state. There are several areas where I think we could get some revenue relief pretty quickly. We haven't had a tax increase on gasoline in the last couple of decades, although a bill did appear in this last session. It didn't go anywhere.
Cheryl Ann.
Well, I agree with Gail. I think taxes are a huge problem that we need to address here. We just saw our legislature pass what they wanted to call tax reform, but it was actually simply a tax shift, and it's unacceptable. We must get to where we have comprehensive tax reform that is equitable, and we have to look at new forms of tax revenue. The Kentucky Center for Economic Policy released a list of about 50 various places that we could find money by closing loopholes, just tweaking our current tax code just a little bit, and tons of money would come in. But we do need those additional streams, such as gambling and marijuana. And I know that a lot of people have problems with those, but Kentucky has loved its vices for a very, very long time. We have bourbon and horse racing and tobacco, and so throwing in some extra gambling on top of our lottery and horse racing and the marijuana, to me, it just makes sense. Absolutely, we have to remain steadfast in a commitment to fully fund public education. So public education will go hand in hand with that money. We need the money first, but then it has to be funneled into our pensions, and it has to be funneled into fully funding public education. And then healthcare. We can't forget healthcare.
Josh.
So simply put, we've got a budget that is failing to meet the needs of Kentucky and Kentuckians across the Commonwealth. And part of that is that we've got a tax system that is based in the 1950s, and while it's had some minor tweaks here and there, it has remained virtually not unoverhauled. It is based on definitely a goods-based economy versus a service-based economy. And so we have to take a look at true tax reform that is both fair and sustainable. Now, the conservative majority in our state legislature's plan was to actually raise taxes on about 95% of Kentuckians while giving $500 million in relief to our wealthiest Kentuckians and our corporate citizens. And that's unacceptable. We have got to have a budget that allows us to fully fund our public education, that honors our promise to both our teachers and our state employees, and we've got to have checks on the incentives that we offer. When we offer an incentive to a corporation or a business to come to Kentucky or to open shop here, we've got to make sure that they're honoring their commitment that they made to us when it comes to the number of jobs that they're bringing in, when it comes to the number of people that they're supporting in the economy. And I will go back, and I want to say, Gail, the studies have been done on medicinal marijuana, and unfortunately, we are going to miss the boat if we don't lead when it comes to this issue. There are people all across this Commonwealth who are suffering from PTSD. Many of them are veterans who have given great sacrifice to our country, that they are relying on us as potential legislators to provide that relief for them. And so I think that the time for studies has passed. It's time to pass that legislation.
Thank you. Starting with Cheryl Ann now. The next question is, do you support an increase in the minimum wage? Why or why not?
I do support an increase for minimum wage. We have to get to a point to where we offer people a living wage, because the current minimum wage is not a living wage. If you do the math on, say, $15 an hour, I think at 40 hours a week, if you work all 52 weeks of the year, I believe that math comes out to like $31,000 a year. A lot of people are making it on a lot less, but it's not enough. It's not sustainable for families, first and foremost. And we have a lot of single moms out there that are working minimum wage jobs, and when they have small mouths to feed, and they need a car to get to work, and they need a roof over their and their kids' head, it's not a living wage. And I know that we have a lot of small businesses. I have been a small business owner who want to say that paying an increased minimum wage would put them out of business. But I think that we have to get to a place to where we are putting people first again. And that is a huge start to lifting people out of poverty. It's a huge start to increase families and their ability to support their kids in things other than what the public schools can provide for them. I think that we have to do it. We have to do it.
Josh?
Yeah, so minimum wage, it was never designed to be this rock bottom. It was designed to keep up with inflation, and really what we need is an actual living wage. And so that's where you see, the city of Lexington, and I was proud to work with so many of the council members here in Lexington for the fight for the 10-10, the raise here in Lexington, that unfortunately our Supreme Court in the state of Kentucky actually struck down and said Lexington didn't have the ability to do that. We've got to work on that. And as a small business owner myself, I understand that paying an employee a respectable wage for a hard day's work is important, not only to their happiness, to supporting their family, but also to making my business even more successful. So I'm definitely one of those small business owners that disagrees with some of them out there that think that a minimum wage or a raise in minimum wage would bankrupt them or something. I'll point out that in 1999, when I came to Lexington to go to the University of Kentucky, I believe the minimum wage was around $5 an hour. I think it was exactly $5.15 an hour. And UK cost $1,600 a semester for tuition and fees in 1999. Now it's closer to, I believe, $7,500 or $8,000. And you can see that our minimum wage of what we say that we're going to pay students has definitely not kept up. And the reality is that the vast majority of the people that are working on minimum wage are not students. They're not kids. They're single moms. They're folks that are trying to do the best they can, and we deserve to honor their hard work by making sure that they're able to live outside of poverty.
Gail?
Absolutely. We're long overdue for an increase in minimum wage. And as Cheryl Ann was saying, in Lexington, a minimum wage is not a living wage. And in Lexington, a living wage, which means a wage that will allow a family of four to buy groceries and pay their rent, is a little over $13, which is almost twice what the minimum wage is right now. It's irresponsible of us to expect people, and as Josh says, most of the people who are working for minimum wage are not teenagers who have an after-school job. It's single mothers who are trying to support themselves and one or more children. It's unconscionable that we've waited this long to try to help lift people above the poverty level. There are even people who work for the state of Kentucky who get food stamps because their wages are so low. And there's no sense in that. That has to stop.
We're down to time for our last question, and I hate that because we have several other
fast.
good questions here that you all would enjoy spending more time on. This is an opportunity for you to tell us what distinguishes you from your opponents, what sets you apart from the other candidates running for this slot. We will now, we will start with Josh.
So, I got in this race back about the same time that Cherlynn was considering to get in this race, and I think I beat her by a day or two by filing and or announcing, and that was part of the plan, was to try to get out there ahead of her. But I really saw a need that we were not being represented, and at the time, both of us were getting in the race to challenge Robert Benvenuti, who has again since stepped out. Because he didn't represent what is the growth and the change, especially the demographics of the 88th. And I really feel like that I am part of that change, that the 88th is becoming much more of a young, working professional, working families, folks that do care about public education. What I think separates me from Cherlynn and Gail is that I've got a track record of nearly 2 decades of working in this community for progressive change, for working to try to make sure that marginalized communities, whether it's based on their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, that those folks have a voice. And so I think that my experience and my energy and my drive that I will take with me to Frankfort is definitely something that I'm proud of, and something that I'm glad to say is something that's a little different.
Gail?
Okay, well, I got into this race. I probably thought about it before either of you did, because my decision to become involved occurred in early 2016, when I had the opportunity to visit Mr. Benvenuti in his office, and had absolutely the worst visit I could have ever possibly imagined. And so at that point, it was either crawl across the desk and slap him or run for office myself. So I decided on the latter. And then there were lots of things that happened in the meantime in terms of personal issues and that sort of thing. So as it worked out, I didn't actually file until the next to the last day, on the same day that Mr. Benvenuti decided he wasn't going to run anymore, which I'm sure it was because he heard I was running. But I also bring a long history of community work to this district. Joe and I, like I said, have lived there for 13 years. I have 5 grandchildren who are in 3 different county school systems, all getting 3 different kinds of education. I've worked for the last 15 years to give people a voice in Lexington in terms of housing issues and payday lending issues, drug issues, and crime issues. And it's my hope to be able to continue to do that.
Gail? Excuse me.
It's okay.
Cheryl Ann.
Well, since we're all talking about when we filed, so I really started thinking about running in this race in the early summer. We had been through the election of Bevin. We had been through the election of Mr. Trump. And then the last legislature was just terrible. And so every day I was scrolling through social media and I was reading the news, and I was just getting really angry and really frustrated. And I was trying to contact my representatives in Washington and Frankfort, and none of them would return my calls or return my emails. And I was actually then, because I was being very vocal on social media, I was approached by some community leaders about running for this race in particular. And I honestly thought, I haven't been in politics before. Maybe I should start with something local. And they were like, no, we think that your voice is matching what we're hearing in the community. And you absolutely need to step up and you need to run for this seat. My husband and I both have been in the stream of service above self for a very, very long time. We've both been very involved in the community. I have spent much of my life, again, working for nonprofits, many of those that I can name across the city, the major one being the American Cancer Society. I love people. I'm passionate about people. I'm not passionate about politics. And I've got to stop. That's so fast.
Thank you. Now, that question may have been good groundwork for your closing remarks, which you now have 90 seconds to conclude your thoughts and finally convince this audience which of you they want to vote for. We will use this order. for closing remarks. Josh, then Gail, then Cheryl Ann. Josh?
Well, I think that we actually, all three of us probably just gave our closing statements that we intended to give when we came in here. And as far as the audience, a good chunk of them are our family members. So I think those votes are already locked up. So, but listen, I want to say thank you all to the audience that is here. Even if you're on Team Cherlynn or Team Gail, I appreciate you coming out and listening to all three of us. Again, I want to thank Gail and I want to thank Cherlynn. You know, what you've heard and what you're going to continue to hear is that at the core, at our hearts, the three of us all believe in the vast majority of the same things. And above that, the most important part that you'll hear from all three of us is that we care about the people of the 88th and Kentuckians all across the Commonwealth. And that has to be the driving force of any person that seeks to be an employee of the voters. And that's what a state legislator is. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum, and I just look forward to talking with folks across the 88th and talking about the new energy and new ideas and new leadership that we can bring that truly represents our district right there in Frankfort. And so thank you. My name is Josh Merz. You can find out more info at joshmerz.com, or you can find me on Facebook or Twitter.
Gail?
Okay. Well, you know, like Josh, I think most of what I've said in the previous question addresses how I feel. I have, as I said, I've spent the last 15 years working in community organizing. Prior to that, I had spent 27 years in the state as the clinical director in a residential treatment program for emotionally disturbed children, which actually has given me a lot of experience in being in politics. But I enjoy people. I enjoy, I like that canvassing part of doing this job. I like knocking on people's doors. Sometimes I spend 30 minutes when I know I only have 5 to spend, because people right now are at a point where everybody has a story to tell, whether it's about healthcare issues that they have in their family, or about teachers who are experiencing right now the crisis that's going on in education, or parents who are concerned about their children who are in educational programs at university and are questioning that decision. I think there are so many wonderful positive things about Kentucky that we want to bring back, that we want to make this state fulfill what we know it can do.
Cheryl Ann?
Well, again, thank all of you for being here. It's like Josh said, I'm not sure if we changed anybody's mind in this room or not. I think everybody that walked in probably already knew who they were going to vote for. But thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for organizing this today. The conversations that we are having are very, very important ones, and we are in a very important time right now in our state. The most important thing that we can do right now is to get back that state House of Representatives. So this is an important race. This is an important seat for us to try for one of us to get that seat, so that in the larger sense we can take back the House as a whole. I have been a public servant for a very long time, and I feel like this is just the next natural step for me in my career of public servitude. I love people, and I believe that my life experiences can take me to Frankfort to adequately represent the people of the 88th District, and I want each and every one of you to know that my door will always be open. My email will always be there, open, ready to be returning emails, and my phone will be on, and my voicemail will be open. You will never catch me in a Mitch McConnell that my voicemail is too full for any of you. Again, I love people, and I love the people of the 88th District. They're my neighbors. They're my community. And my name's Cheryl Ann Stephenson, and I ask for your vote May 22nd and again on November the 6th.
I think it goes without saying that the people of the 88th District have 3 excellent candidates from which to choose, and I think we are richly blessed in that way. I hope you will encourage your neighbors to be active in the small d democratic process and get out and vote. That being said, I thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and don't forget, more than these will hear what you've had to say today as we encourage them to check it out on the library channel. Thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon. Let's give the candidates a round of applause.